Welcome to our fireside chat. We are CSC alumni who are here to try to encapsulate, although this will be very difficult, encapsulate the experience of the CSC conference. CSC stands for Commonwealth Study Conference, and it was founded in 1956 by the Duke of Edinburgh. It is incredibly unique. And although you'll see us nodding our heads to each other's stories, they're incredibly unique stories, and everybody's experience and path since the conference is also distinct. We come from all over the Commonwealth, and we're just going to take this opportunity to ask a few questions about what people's experiences were. So Cthulhu, I'd like to start with you. Could you tell me how you heard about the conference, why you applied, and what your big takeaway was?
Thank you. So the way I got to know about the conference is just one of the advantages of why you should attend the conference. It was through networking. I was in contact with someone who had previously participated in the conference, and then they encouraged me to apply for the conference.
And what was the big takeaway for you?
I think my big takeaway was actually something very practical, the change in behavior and perception, where I understood and I saw my colleagues understand that they are working in a diverse environment, and they need to take into consideration different perspectives when are coming into making decisions.
That is very true. There's lots of people who I met during that conference. As you all know, it's very programmed, and there's so many new voices that you wouldn't run into in your everyday life or your everyday career path. Those voices stick with me as I move forward in my career. Joe, are there any voices that you carry with you that you met through your conference experience that you could tell us about?
There's so many really to say that. I think one of the really insightful things for me, and I was on the same conference with Cynthia, who's also on this discussion, was we visited a prison. We were down in New Zealand and we visited a prison, and there were so many facts and figures that you read, but when you see something and you actually go there and you meet the people, the majority of the people in the prison were actually Maori people, and there was such a background at that time, 2003, of people not having good outcomes, so they went into prison and then they couldn't necessarily get jobs or employment, and there was other problems, abuse, substance abuse and that kind of thing. And then when they came out of that prison, their options were really limited, but speaking to them, getting to know them, it really put the facts and figures into place. And one real voice that came out of that for me was one of our team was actually based in New Zealand, and he was an employer, and he came away from that and he said, it's really changed me. Now, when I start interviewing people for jobs, I'm going to be looking for ex-offenders. You know, it opened that whole thing up for him and for all of us. So I took that away completely.
That's amazing. I think empathy is something that you really flex at this conference. And part of it is, just raising your hand and taking a chance on this application, which we're hoping that you will do. Emery, you and I are one of the few who answered sort of basically just a newspaper ad. So neither of us knew any alumni. We didn't have anyone to ask about this conference. And I remember the testimonials that I read, I thought, maybe, they said, oh, it's life-changing, it'll change your career. And I thought, we'll see. But it absolutely has done everything that it promised to do in its way, and probably unique to me as it is to all the delegates. Can you tell us a bit about your experience, Emery, with the conference?
Yeah, I'd like to describe what I would consider one of the most profound experiences I had. So I was on the conference in Canada. Stephen and I actually attended the same year. And one of the most profound experiences for me was meeting with Indigenous people in Canada. As a recent immigrant to Canada, I had not had that opportunity. And just days after we met with the First Nations community and the First Nations leaders in Nova Scotia, it so happened that very week, the Prime Minister of Canada issued an apology in Parliament for the treatment of Indigenous people in residential schools. And it was very, very solemn for us as a group that moment, witnessing that. And there and then I realized that this was the moment I had to reckon with the past of my adopted country. and a painful past, but I also understood that as a leader, it was now my responsibility to learn from that and to do better going forward. So my profound experience really shaped the way I thought about communities, the impacts of our decisions, and it just underscored the need for leaders to think and act, not simply within the things within their boundaries, their organizational boundaries, but also within the communities that they live.
Yeah, I need a moment to process all of those things, but I met Isabel Knockwood, who was a residential school survivor, and she's one of those voices. And I don't mean, once in a while, I mean, I really think about her a lot and the things that she talked about in terms of resilience and her commitment to her community. Cynthia, I want to ask you a question because you talk about the conference like it was yesterday. It is so present in the way you approach your life. Can you give some words of encouragement to people who are watching right now thinking, I'm not sure if that's me. I'm not sure if I'm qualified. Convince them.
Look, I think, you're 100% correct, Sybil. I ooze the enthusiasm for the program, and I think it's lifelong friends. I mean, Joe and I have been in contact with each other as ex-alumni of very deep friendships that has arisen from that experience. But more importantly, when you're in your 30s and you're in a development phase as a leader, I happen to already be in a very senior role in business. I was the CEO of a very large company, and I was tapped on the shoulder by an alumni, someone who saw in me the opportunity that this experience would bring. And I had no idea. I kind of blindly put my application in, and I remember Joan saying to me, look, Joan, Cynthia, please have a go and put your hand up. And I went through the recruitment process, had no idea that I would fit the bill. And when I reflect back on the 27 site visits, the intense experience of being with a collective group of such diverse people from all around the Commonwealth. Now, for me, as a working class girl growing up in Sydney, Australia, I would never have had the opportunity to connect with people from all around the world and have opportunity to expand my own thoughts of leadership at a really pivotal time in my own career. And I think that's probably what's so profound, is to encourage young leaders, particularly leaders who might be doubting themselves. Maybe they've already risen to a senior level and you need to be challenged with a much broader landscape. And that's what Commonwealth Study Conference does. Representatives of unions, business, non-government organisations, very diverse individuals from all around the globe. And you don't get that as an opportunity. You just don't. So we really want to encourage individuals to put their hand up and apply for this truly once in a lifetime experience. Here I am now, 20 years later, almost 18, 19 years, and I still reflect on that experience, how profound it affected me as a leader, how it's impacted the work I do, and how I use that experience to bring about a diverse view of different voices and how I'm impactful for Australia. So in my area of specialty, which is aged care, and how I can be a voice of support from a whole range of different areas. So for me, it's really encouraging you as a candidate to think about putting your hand up, going through the application process and putting yourself out there to experience something that truly is a once in a lifetime. You don't get this chance all the time. As Sybil said, it doesn't happen all the time. COVID pandemic has interrupted it a little bit, usually every 4 years. And Canada 2023, I'm looking forward to going as alumni, and we'll be keen to see you, on your own journey, making this experience your own.
Yeah, it definitely is your own experience, even though you do see that there is a collective empathy that's built and collective purpose, certainly. Stephen, we've been in a few rooms together working on the CSC 2023, the upcoming conference. What is it for you that fuels that commitment to this program, and what was the impact that the program had on your work?
I would say that the biggest impact for me was our experience with Indigenous people. So, and also arriving to the conference, just before I get into that story, I was one of the few entrepreneurs, right? And I remember getting my binder and opening it up and realizing who I was with, and I'm going, wow, what have I been doing with my life? right?
Mm.
Very impressive people. And it was a bit daunting, I have to admit. So I share that story a little bit for those who are considering to apply, and don't let your self-doubt get in your way, right? You belong, there's a leader inside you, there's value you can contribute. And one of the things about this conference, it will unlock it, I'm promising you. And back to the Yukon, the Indigenous experience, we had the apology, we had huge impactful experience engaging with Indigenous people. Phil Fontaine, who was the Chief of Assembly of First Nations in Canada, the Indigenous people in Canada, he gave us a testimonial of his own residential school story. I had a chance to speak with him, and we spoke with others throughout the Yukon. But then, we were challenged to go out back into the real world and take what we learned, be leaders, add to our community, and I did it. I actually went and learned and kept learning especially about many things, but the Indigenous issues in this country really resonated with me. And just all to say, 14 years later, I've written a book that just launched, and it's about systemic inequality and racism. But that story of the conference, the impact it had on me, and what I did as a result of it in my community, in my country, and giving back in regards to trying to bridge the divides of understanding, is all as a result of that spark at the conference all the way back in 2008.
I don't think there could be a better endorsement to the conference. Thank you so much. Hopefully for you, those of you who are out there listening, something resonated with you, that you could imagine what this conference might be for you and how much you might be able to contribute to this conference. 2023 Commonwealth Study Conference in Canada, members from all around the world who are fumbling through the complexities of this world, just like you, with drive, with courage, and with empathy. So please apply.
Do it.